something really good, a hot topic in the news this week. He's been charged with crime. This is a show where I try to educate real stories. Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. As your community activist and community concerned lawyer, I have a great candidate for DA in the building tonight. It is going to be our pleasure tonight to talk to Democratic candidate Kim Ogg. I've known Kim Ogg since 1992 when I was first a Harris County prosecutor. She was fair then, and I believe she's fair now. We will get into the issues. We're having an upcoming event for Kim, so that it's a meet and greet, and it's going to be August 25th, 2016 at 5:30 at the Geit Art Gallery. It's a gallery on Alabama, 2425 Alabama, 77004, and you can come out and talk to Kim, meet her, engage her, talk to her about any of the policies and procedures of the Harris County District Attorney's Office that you don't like, that you do like, that you want more questions answered, because after all, when she wins, she will be your community district attorney. So Kim, thank you for running over in the rain. I know it was difficult to get here because it's bad weather today, but thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for sharing your audience with me.
It's my pleasure, and hopefully they've come home from work. But the good thing about this show is it runs 12 times, and then I put them on YouTube too. So they run them about 12 times, so it'll circulate through. So, you know, there are a lot of, I'm gonna jump right into it.
So I'm on the record 12 times. That's what you're saying, Vivian.
Yes, 12 times you will be on the record at Houston Media Source. So they rerun these all times of day and night. So a lot of my audience don't see it when it airs, but they see it later. So they tell me when I see them around.
Cool.
So one of the things I want to just get right started with, I have a letter that I want to read to my audience. And one of the things, you know, that I want to do is educate people about the criminal justice system. And I want to start by a letter that I was emailed by Senator Rodney Ellis. Senator Ellis will be our state senator until December 31st. As of January 1st of next year, he will become our county commissioner. But he wrote a letter August 2016, and I'm going to read you some of it. Dear friend, well, actually, let me read. He sent me two letters. One of them is to the Honorable Loretta Lynch, United States Attorney General in Washington, D.C. Dear Attorney Lynch, says Senator Rodney Ellis, I write to echo the request of the United States Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who urged the United States Department of Justice to use its authority under the civil rights of institutionalized persons, and here's the statute, 42 U.S.C. 1997, to investigate the conditions at the Harris County Jail in Houston, Texas, where a rape victim was apparently unjustly detained for 27 days while waiting to testify against her attacker. This incident is yet another example of systemic constitutional issues surrounding the custody, treatment, medical and mental health care, and sanitation of the Harris County Jail. As detailed in the attached press reports, an anonymous woman was raped in Houston in 2013. The rape victim, who had a prior diagnosis of bipolar disorder, was testifying against her attacker in December of 2015 when she suffered a mental breakdown. She was admitted to a local hospital for mental health treatment when the judge ordered a recess for the holiday break until January. The Harris County District Attorney has acknowledged that after the victim's release from the hospital, an assistant district attorney, a prosecutor, persuaded a district judge to issue a writ of attachment that was then issued by the Harris County Sheriff to jail the victim. The district attorney has asserted that jailing the victim was necessary to prevent her from fleeing before she completed her testimony. According to the complaint, the employee who booked the victim in the Harris County Jail identified her as a defendant in a sexual assault case rather than a victim. While in jail, the victim did not receive her mental health treatment that she needed from the local hospital. To make matters worse, the victim suffered beatings from other inmates and from a guard, who then requested assault charges be filed against her in an attempt to cover up the brutal abuse that she sustained at the hands of a guard and other inmates. A month after the rape victim was imprisoned, she was released as a material witness, and the district attorney's office dismissed the felony assault case against her. Sadly, this young woman not only was a victim of a violent crime, but also was victimized by the systemic failures of the Harris County criminal justice system. Viewers, this is why we do this show. This is why we have these forums and we talk about it, because this is not right. We need accountability by all law enforcement because we pay their salaries. So I am going to turn to Kim Ogg to talk about this, because this is a hot button issue right now.
Well, this is what the Harris County District Attorney's race is all about. Devin Anderson has defended the decision to jail the rape victim, refused to tell the public who actually made that decision, angrily expressed the need and alleged no other option available defense for her and her staff. And it is being talked about across the nation, and it should be. It shocked me, an attorney of 30 years this year, a former prosecutor like you, criminal defense lawyer. I knew they treated criminal defendants badly down at the Harris County District Attorney's Office because I've experienced it firsthand, but I had no idea that they were using their power in such a heavy-handed way to compel victims to testify. They've been jailing people to compel their testimony. First, it builds in an automatic appeal because the witness is clearly under duress from the state to testify, not just to testify, but to testify in a way good enough to get them released from jail. So it's a frightening abuse of power that I will never endorse or defend, and that I came out against right away. I too asked for an independent investigation, and I'm so glad that Senator Ellis and Congresswoman Lee asked the Justice Department to investigate. I thought we should get at least a special prosecutor, and you can see no judge down there has moved to ask for an independent investigation from a special prosecutor, which is inexpensive, which is fair. We have plenty of people qualified. It has nothing to do with politics. It's a bona fide complaint, and yet not one incumbent judge down there, and they're almost all Republican judges,
right,
have lifted a finger to investigate, including the judge who signed the order. And this is one of three.
I know.
This is one of three that we know about.
We know of 3 victims of rape that have been jailed. It's been used. Now, I will go on record. I said it to the reporters who called me about it. Brian Rogers from the Chronicle called me and I gave a statement. I believe it was oppressive to jail the victim. I believe that we overutilize jails in Harris County and in this country. I think there was and is a less coercive manner to get people's testimony. I mean, that is just not fair. And I always have to give the caveat that I was an internal auditor for 9 years before I became a lawyer. So I'm used to figuring out and writing procedures and making sure procedures are being followed. The problem with the Harris County District Attorney's Office is, and the thing that was so frightening to me when I became a prosecutor after 9 years of being an internal auditor, an accountant, and an efficiency expert with 70 former Texas Commerce banks, now Chase banks, is that there's accountability, there's a policy, there's a procedure, and there should certainly be a procedure for a 26-year-old prosecutor or 27 or 28-year-old prosecutor who's never had a job, a real job, a responsible job, who's never had real life's experiences, because they're at the beginning. Thank God they're at the beginning, but they should be at the beginning of dealing with the beginners in the society, like juveniles, people that they're more closely aged with.
Well, your experience is right on the money. The idea that the Harris County DA's office is still using the same, to the best of my knowledge, same policy employee manual that we had back in the late 80s. The timesheets are the same. They've just been computerized. They still use carbon paper. So the fact that there's no clear policies about how to treat victims, how to handle cases, that the training is not there for lawyers, is no excuse for this kind of behavior.
Right.
But we know how little discretion the lawyers have. And so with Devin Anderson's admission on a taped statement that key personnel made this decision, with my knowledge that Nick Socius, the #2 prosecutor who asked the court to put this witness in jail, has very little authority, not just personally, but none of the lawyers in the trial courts have very much authority, not to dismiss misdemeanors, much less to put a crime victim in jail. So I think it is inferable that this decision not only was sanctioned from the top, from key personnel, but this is the way that Devin and her top lieutenants see as an appropriate way to seek justice. And it's been rejected by everybody in the country. And it tells you just how out of touch Anderson and her administration, the entire administration, is with regular people.
Oh, I agree. If you're watching, please call us. Weigh in on this discussion. We want to know what you think at 713-807-1794. I believe I have a caller. Caller, if you can turn your volume down and talk directly into the phone, it will help us. State your comment, please.
My comment is I don't really know much about Kim Ogg. I just always know that every time she talks very smart and very sense and knowledgeable. My question is anyone going to ever, we talk about the criminal justice system, what is state jail system designed for?
You said the state jail system?
Yes, and these are repeat offenders, and I just think state jail is a waste of time.
Well, I will, since Kim is our guest, I will let her give her opinion, and then I'll just give mine as a lawyer, too, if you want it.
So
okay,
thank you for the smart comment. I very much appreciate that.
She is smart. She is smart.
I hope to live up to that compliment.
She is smart. I remember when I first seen her, she's very smart and knowledgeable. Yeah, I take her over Devin Anderson anytime. Yes, ma'am.
All right, spread the word.
Thank you. So I think what you're talking about is what is the purpose of the jail, the Harris County Jail? And you're calling it state jail, but that actually
Do you mean Harris County
different.
Jail? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So the purpose of
No,
jail.
I mean state jail.
Okay.
Tell me what you know about state jail to make sure we're on the same page.
I just know that they can do up to 2 years of a sentence.
Okay.
And it was designed to not be for repeat offenders.
Okay.
That's all true. It was designed
Okay.
to keep sort of the
Nonviolent.
less violent section of felony offenders closer to home, so that in theory they could have more opportunities at employment and reintegration into the workforce and society by being closer to home. We can see that it's worked just the opposite, that the state jail has basically been used by the government as a tool of oppression in small-time drug cases to cycle the same individuals over and over and over in state jail, almost in a way that a regular person couldn't get out of. And it makes them unemployable, unhousable. It's had just the opposite effect that I sat through legislative hearings listening to this theory that state jails would get the offenders closer to the community. So I agree with the caller. State jails have been a waste in the way they've been used. So I think when we start to prosecute more serious cases and we start to use our state jail for people who are committing fraud, who are ripping off the elderly, who are committing serious crimes but more property crimes, that state jail will have a greater use than it has now. And we do want to reintegrate offenders, first time or otherwise, into the labor force. We have to get people, and we have to keep them working or get them back working.
I totally agree, ma'am. In 1994, when they created the state jails, it was because back then, anything under a gram, under 28 grams, they were just being, like they go to jail for 6 months, 8 months, and before you know it, they were habitual offenders because it was a third-degree felony, and they were doing 25, 26 years on what's now known as a crack rock, back then. And they changed the law to free up those bed spaces, based on my perception as a baby prosecutor, to free up the bed spaces so that the serious offenders could go to TDC. And so the nonviolent offenders could actually just serve a little time, no more than 2 years, no parole system, no real enhancement system. The first state jail laws didn't have enhancement systems. And then the legislator, but the DAs they kept trying to make them habituals. And there was a lot of appeals about that. And then every 2 years, our state legislators added more and more to the state jail. Then if you've been to prison twice before, then you had state jail enhancements. Or if you did 2 other state jail trips, you had those kind of enhancements. Those were added every 2 years until it became a monster all its own. But it wasn't the design. There was an original design where people would get, if it was a state jail felony, they'd get automatic probation. The DA's office fought against that. Do you remember that?
That's absolutely true.
They made them do 1244A, which is a felony punished as a misdemeanor, so they would absolutely have a conviction. And so now we have this whole segment of society that gets in trouble at 19 and 20 with a crack rock, and they now are unemployable almost for the rest of their lives, and they're 19. And I fought against this with Devin and others in groups that I've been in, American Leadership Forum, and said, look, 5 years ago I fought with them, and I said, we are throwing away a whole population based on going to prison for 6 months, and for the rest of they're 20 years old. They're sitting around watching TV. When I was 20, I had more energy than I had in my life. I could work, I could go to school all day, I could work from 8 in the morning till 12 at night. And now you have these kids with unemployable, sitting around with all the energy in the world, watching TV, which they shouldn't even be doing, watching commercials, seeing new Porsches, new Audis, new cars, new purses, new tennis shoes. And what do? They can't get a job. People still want the same things out of life, so what do? That creates for them to prey on us. When if they were working, they could feel comfortable about themselves. They could get a little apartment with their little girlfriends. They could have 2 $25,000 a year jobs to make 50.
This is all true.
They could start a life, and all of Devin Anderson and some of the others said, no, we're not going to help them get jobs. We're not going to help. And that was 5 years ago. Now, of course, as DA, she's singing a different tune. She wasn't a DA at the time. She was in between being a judge. But I'm just saying, the Republicans that are in control know what the problem is. And this year, because it's a contested race, there are more programs for the state jail felons. But that has not been going on for the last 24 years.
And you can bet if you re-elect them that it will end just like it did after the original lawsuit that created special programs and that led to the creation of the state jails. So it is very disingenuous for Devin Anderson to call herself a reformer and to put programs out there that are a fraction of what we need to save our young population.
And she knows what's needed. I like Devin personally, but we have an intelligent disagreement, okay, about this. We disagree, and I disagree with her. So thank you for being vigilant. Tell your friends to vote. We can change this. I'm passionate about Kim. I am throwing a fundraiser, a meet and greet for her.
I'm going to send you ladies my information. I'm going to be more than happy to volunteer whenever time y'all need somebody to volunteer.
Yeah, give it to me right now. I'm writing it down.
Okay. My first name is Linda, and my last name is Jackson.
Okay.
I'm at 832-243-6364.
My office will be calling you tomorrow while I'm in court, okay? And all I'm going to need, Linda, is your email address, and we'll send you the information, and you can come and talk to us on August 25th at Lloyd Geitz Gallery. You can Google it, GITE, 2425 Alabama in 3rd Ward, in between Alameda.
I know what 3rd Ward is. I grew up in the Trey. I know where
All right, baby. I just want to make sure.
All right.
I made sure. Okay, well, thank you for calling, and stay. Thank you for loving us, and we need your help because we need. The minority inner city community needs a voice at the table. Everybody needs a voice at the table. I'm not trying to start no fights with anybody, but we need a voice at the table. And with Kim, we'll have one. Thank you for calling.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for calling. So anyway, we were trying to get into this. Oh, I want to talk more about the rape victim. Any calls, come on and call us, and interrupt us. We'll take your call. But I want to get into this. So it's my understanding, when I was a prosecutor and even now as a defense lawyer, we subpoena people. And if they're personally served, that means that an investigator or a deputy or an independent person has served the person with the subpoena. They write the return. They say, I gave it to Kim Ogg or Vivian King on today's date. They return it to the court. And if they don't show up, then the prosecutor or the defense lawyer, whoever subpoenaed that person and had them personally served, can ask the judge to issue a writ of attachment. But those elements, that proof has to be used, because Harris County is so large that even though subpoenas are supposed to be personally served, in the criminal arena, our county has decided we'll mail it to them. Although that's not proper service, we do that to see if we'll have voluntary participation. But a real subpoena must be served in your hand. So if you mail it and they call and they say they got it, then you know that they got it. But we should serve them. No rape victim or no victim, nobody, no witness should be brought in unless they have been personally served with a return and there has been due diligence shown and sworn to a neutral magistrate like a judge to issue a warrant or a writ of attachment for them. Tell me, Kim, has that changed?
That has not changed.
That still
is
the law?
That was the law, and that is the law that was violated in this rape victim's case.
Was she personally served?
She was not. That is my understanding.
And I think that's why the judges aren't saying anything, because we are protecting a judge, right? I mean, because
I think they're all protecting each other because this is so illegal. You know, the material witness bond itself is just a guarantee that you have something financial to hold over the witness, to give you some leverage to get them to come to court.
Right.
You're actually never supposed to set a bond that the witness can't make. Right. That's the law. In these cases, the district attorney knew that the victims were indigent and could afford no bond and couldn't post a bond. And they intentionally asked judges to set bonds that those victims couldn't make.
Like what?
The whole practice is illegal.
Oh my God. But if they haven't been personally served, I want to deal with that. To get a witness arrested, they have to be personally served. And what I want you to take from this conversation tonight is that, to our knowledge, to my knowledge, the witnesses were not served. And that is the law. And the district attorney's duty is not to convict, but to see that justice is done. And they're also bound to follow the law. And if the law says they have to be personally served, then no one wants to talk about that. But I'm here to tell you that's what I believe was violated, because I was called by the Houston Chronicle to make a statement, and I got the information from the reporter, but the reporter says there's no proof in the Harris County District Clerk's file, that's Chris Daniels, it's public record, that the witness had been personally served with that return that's been signed by some person who served the subpoena saying, I served rape victim on this date, this time, and filed it with the district clerk's office. That's the missing element. So if anybody wants to play private eye, that's what the problem is. So
Vivian King just wrapped that case.
I'm just saying, but that's what the problem is. So that's the thing I'm waiting to hear.
I think, and let me say this, there are so many facts that are in contention between Devin Anderson personally and the representation she made on videotape to the public, and the victim, her family, and their lawyer, Sean Buckley, that it's going to take depositions, discovery, and maybe even trial for the full truth to come out. But as our elected district attorney, Devin Anderson should be transparent. She should be open about the actions of her office. After all, she got on television and defended them. So why not show us the clear path that the decision followed, the chain of command, who did what, who approved this, specifically who's responsible. And it's wrong to defend actions like this and yet deny the public the information or access to the information. My campaign asked for emails between assistant district attorneys, Devin Anderson, and the victim and her family, anybody else about this victim. And instead of turn over the emails, the district attorney went to the attorney general and asked for an opinion, which, as you know, just delays the inevitable production.
And it actually cancels it, because by asking the attorney general, she knows that if it's in litigation, they generally don't have to turn it over. So she wants the attorney general to answer and not turn it over. But the truth is the truth, and the facts don't lie. And so why not turn it over? Why not settle the lawsuit? Why is there a lawsuit? Just give them the information.
Right.
This is our district attorney's office.
That's right. It is the people's district attorney's office, and that victim and the rest of us have a right to know who made this decision that we so violently disagree with.
And if it was wrong, then that DA either needs to be reprimanded, fired, instead of, what I have a problem with, and this was always a problem with me in the DA's office and now as a defense lawyer, is we defend before we investigate. We're supposed to be an investigative body. We need to deal with the truth. There's no job that I've ever heard of where people don't make mistakes. When I was a banker, I made mistakes. I mean, everybody makes mistakes. That's how you learn. But when young DAs are making mistakes, they're making mistakes with people's lives. And so there has to be accountability and procedures to follow.
There does, and they deserve good training. They deserve to be taught how to prepare. In this case, the prosecutor evidently was terribly unprepared, and the case was not worked up, and he was under a lot of pressure. So when Devin defended him and said, oh, he tried all these things, these alternatives to get her help, but didn't know where to turn, you know, the truth is he was covering his tail. He had not prepared the case. And so he evidently didn't ask other people for help. And if he did, then they either didn't give it to him or they didn't know where to turn. And
let's talk about that a minute. So let me throw something else out. The Harris County District Attorney's Office has a mental health prosecutor.
They do.
And we now have a mental health court.
Right.
Now, it's for defendants, but when we have a mental health prosecutor, he's very nice, he's calm, he's learned. I deal with him. He's a very appropriate person for that position. I wonder, was he even talked to about it? Because he deals with the mentally challenged defendants.
Right. He would know the outside sources, the nonprofits.
Right.
Really, the district attorney's office needs partnerships with outside agencies that provide social services.
What about the women's shelter? I mean, by God, I mean, I've always given my clothes to the women's shelter. My mother was abused and battered. And so that's always been a tender spot with me. So I give clothes. I mean, the women's shelter has housing. I mean, I go to a female housing spot that's off of 288 in Holcomb.
Right.
And give my clothes there. That's where the women live with their children. We give donations, and what's extra they sell or take to the central location. So it's not like there's not all female facilities for women to go to if they need shelter. Well, but who says they do? I don't know.
And Vivian, she had a family.
Right.
She had a boyfriend. They're calling her homeless. They took her. They picked her up evidently from
East
her
Texas,
residence.
from someone's house. I heard it was from East Texas, from a relative's house.
So, characterizing people as homeless and using that as an excuse to jail them is simply a prosecutor acting for their own convenience and security. It's their desire to win, because cases can be reset. Rape, for example, has no statute of limitations. That case could have been tried later. There were other cases, evidently, if he was a serial rapist, there were other cases that could have been tried. The most critical thing is you can't hurt people in the name of greater good. The end will never justify that means. You can't say, well, to save 1,000, we killed one. And after all, Devin has been saying that she's a crime victims advocate, and that's the purpose of their office. Interesting, the crime victims advocacy that I've done in front of the legislature, the Christmas tree ornament hangings where people put pictures of their deceased loved ones on a Christmas tree at City Hall, all of these occasions, the candlelight vigils for different crime victims, I've never seen Devin present at any of those events. I've not seen her champion the rights of crime victims anywhere, and yet she called herself a champion of crime victims' rights. And how you can then defend the practice of jailing victims to achieve winning convictions is just so hypocritical that the facts are the facts, and we're going to have to let the voters decide. But I really hope they put themselves in the victim's shoes And so, as you know, Vivian, my mom was kidnapped when I was a child by a serial rapist, forced into her car, speeded down Main Street with him driving the car, and Mom was so scared she was strong enough to jump out of the moving car at 40 miles an hour and save her own life. That strength did not translate into being able to talk about it publicly. And as a result, I didn't talk about it publicly for many years because while Mom didn't whine about it or complain, it was always present in her lack of trust in people, in her concern for her children's and family's safety. And so the idea that my mom, who wasn't raped, but who suffered as a crime victim,
Was terrified.
could have been jailed because she was so impacted or harmed by the event is sickening to me. It's sickening to me.
It's sickening.
And it makes me really angry on Jenny's behalf and others. We can get rapists, we can investigate them, we can put them in jail. We need to make sure they're the right person.
Definitely make sure they're the right
We need to handle the
person.
scientific evidence appropriately, but we can do this without jailing victims.
I mean, wouldn't it be
ridiculous.
wonderful if that agency, the district attorney's office and law enforcement would have counseled with the victim, the women's shelter, the women who counsel battered women? And
No
said,
record of that call by
Right.
Nick Socius, who claimed that he called everybody in town. The truth will come out, but it's likely to come out in this lawsuit after the election.
Right.
And so I'm really hopeful that this national rejection that Devin has encountered from the New York Times, from the Dallas Morning News, very different newspapers, very conservative, very liberal papers, all condemning it. Crime victims groups nationally condemning it. Local lawyers, even the local women's shelter here, condemn these actions. And so today, at the Houston Chronicle, I figured this would be a large part of the topic
Sure.
at our editorial board interview. And it's interesting to tell your public and your viewers that my opponent, Devin Anderson, declined to interview with Houston Chronicle.
Wow. And do you think it was because of she knew she would get the question about the rape victim?
She's defended it on national television by issuing a YouTube statement, so I don't know why that would have stopped her. I guess we'd have to ask her. But to fail to appear, maybe we needed a material witness bond.
No, but to fail to appear with the Chronicle?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't believe that. The only newspaper we have in town? Or
Right.
the biggest newspaper
The
we
biggest.
have in town?
Yep.
Wow.
So there's a real
So how does
reluctance.
the interview go when you're, it's kind of like a candidate forum to endorse one or the other, and the other person
Me in the
doesn't
empty
show?
chair.
You in the empty chair? How does that go?
It was just fine. I mean, there's so much to talk about: bail reform, the restructuring of intake, how we're going to handle diversionary programs, what we're going to do about misdemeanor marijuana, because I've said I won't prosecute it, and how we're going to handle those cases. Very interesting, exciting topics to talk about.
Wow.
But the one that draws the biggest distinction between the candidates and the issue that offers the voters the clearest choice is we have a district attorney willing to sacrifice crime victims to win cases. And me, the other candidate, who will never do that. I will never do that. We will seek justice. That's our job. And if you can't convict somebody because your evidence is bad, then it's bad.
It's just bad. You can't
And
change
the
it.
person goes free. And if we have to take a lesser charge or a lesser sentence because the health and welfare of the victim require it, then that's what we'll do.
And what viewers need to know is there are sometimes victims or alleged victims, or what legally they're called complainants, don't want to prosecute. I mean, so
It happens in domestic violence all the time.
In fact, 75% of them just don't want to prosecute. It was an argument, it went bad, but there was a time in Texas that the sanctity of the relationship was more important than the government's interest to intrude on people's affairs.
We still have a waiting period in divorce with the hopes that, family values will cause people to reconcile.
Right.
We have laws protecting the unborn. And yet, when it comes to a wife testifying against a husband, prosecutors have been relentless in destroying that privilege and in forcing women compelling them to testify against their domestic partner.
Right.
And it goes on every day. And because domestic violence is such a thorny issue and such a prominent problem, we've had such horrible murders here, I think that that tactic is not as scrutinized as it should be.
I agree, because there is a problem, but I do believe that the complainant or victim's rights and interests should really be taken into account more seriously.
They should.
Because there's sometimes that we could recommend that both people get counseling. You know, the victim and the defendant.
Right.
There are things that can be that's not a record, you know, because sometimes it is mutual combat. Sometimes it is they're both drinking or getting high. You know, not to excuse any of it, but sometimes women are lying. And let me just say this. The vast majority of family domestic assaults that I get, there are no physical injuries. Okay, let me just add that. So I'm not trying to be soft on crime, because I am not soft on crime, but we over-prosecute. That's all I can say. I mean, I grew up in San Antonio where it was a lot of roughnecks, but the only people who went to jail were people we were afraid of. I mean, marijuana in the 70s was illegal, but I'm black. I mean, San Antonio was 5% black. But if white, it wasn't no black cops. So if white and Hispanic cops stopped us in high school with beer from a football game, they threw it away. Go home. If it was marijuana in the car, when it was a felony in the 70s, they threw it away. It was no racial issues or I'm gonna take them in. I mean, the little boys who maybe did an aggravated robbery, they went to jail.
Well, yeah.
If they sold heroin, they went to jail. But if they were just regular kids doing what kids do, experimenting, they threw it away, maybe cussed you out and told you to go on about your business.
Or called your parents, then you got in a lot of trouble.
And you got in a lot of trouble. Or they followed you home, because, you know,
But
back
you didn't
then,
get a life sentence with a record that never goes away.
Never. No.
And so
most of us wouldn't be anything if that happened, because we got caught with stuff that we shouldn't have had in our cars.
that is all true. And that's why
They didn't search your car. They didn't stop a kid and take them out of the car and humiliate them.
because they were focused on violent crime and on the
Exactly.
crimes that residents and regular people called in.
And were
they
afraid
weren't out
of.
making their own drug cases on a quota basis,
Right.
like we see happening in a lot of agencies where they've got to go out and make so many arrests to be productive. The easiest arrests for them to make are people with empty crack pipes who are
Right.
often mentally ill and
Right.
truly homeless.
Right.
And so we have a jail full of mentally ill people charged with low-level drug crimes that cost taxpayers millions of dollars and that create a population that we are never able to reintegrate into our workforce. So we're cutting our nose off to spite our own face. I learned that Houston is the only city in the country with more jobs than qualified people. And you don't have to have a college degree for a lot of jobs to be qualified.
Exactly.
Jobs down in the refinery pay $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 with no degree needed. We need skilled labor.
And if we use our resources to help these kids that have maybe a state jail felony, as the caller called in, and ask these employers. This is what I wanted American Leadership Forum to do. Let's ask these employers to maybe pay them less than you would someone else. Or maybe if they're on probation for a state jail felony, to see if maybe you can pay them minimum wage to train them, you know, as a part of your probation. Because another thing I think is probation is out of style. The probation that we've used for the last 20 years is something from 50 years ago, where people had two parents, they messed up a little bit, but they had a structure in which they could follow all these rules.
That's
right now they have grandmother on crack, mother on crack, maybe grandmother raised them or great-grandmother. They have no money, they have nowhere to go. The bus system is inadequate in Houston to get you from point A to point B at any reasonable time, especially since we have the Metro Rail. They cut a lot of the bus lines out. It was a bus stop at my office. It was cut last year. So I'm just saying, we have to have a probation program that teaches people skills like at the refineries while they're on probation. Maybe they make not even minimum wage, maybe $5 an hour in a bus token, but we need to teach them a skill. And some of these young people—
This will make us safer.
It will make us safer. And it will
that
take
is the
people,
point of
people into
probation.
taxpayers.
Yes, that is the point of probation, to rehabilitate somebody outside of the jail setting and to make society safer by rehabilitating the person.
Right.
And so our probation program is woefully out of touch. We do things that we did in the 1970s and 80s, and those practices with these judges have not changed, and that's just wrong.
We didn't
need
have crack in the
fresh
70s.
ideas. We
Right.
need new policies.
We do.
The DA can lead this, but the DA cannot do all these things alone. We're going to have judges on our benches that also will embrace progressive and fresh new policies and ideas and be open-minded about what punishment and accountability looks like, because, you know, our community wants people to work.
They do.
All
All of our community, even the most right-wing person on the jury wants that person to have a job.
We do.
And everybody,
They do.
and they do, we do, I do. I don't want, I mean, I've worked like a dog my whole life. I don't want people sitting around and us taking care of them, but we can't bastardize them and put marks on them and then say, go get a job.
It's not possible.
It's not
They can't
possible.
get
They can't
jobs.
get that. We've got, our probation departments need to be more employment oriented.
So
training oriented.
So public-private partnerships are something that I learned from Mayor Lanier, a wonderful mayor in Houston who was very good at making government have a bigger impact by inviting public industry to help pay for it while private industry receives some of the benefits for it. And so if we keep our labor market flush with people and we work with employers who will take people who have had a conviction or a probation, even if they condition the employment, that's better than no employment.
Exactly.
And this spells opportunity for people that right now they're being denied. We did free expunction clinics all year. My campaign did. And while it was politically based out of my campaign, the motivation was pure. We have people all over town with crimes that have either been dismissed or they've been found not guilty on, and they're on their record. And if it's on their record in the last 3 years, many times housing applicants, their record, all that the housing agency sees or that the management group that runs an apartment sees is a record.
Right.
And the dismissal doesn't really mean anything to them. So we offered free expunctions, which is really something. The law schools
really
agreed
expensive.
to file them. It's a $2,500 value out in the free world. And the law schools agreed to help. And so the clinics are taking these cases. And while we can't take nearly as many as we'd like to, I intend to roll out a policy that will, I think, be the first of its kind in Texas, where the district attorney's office will begin the expunction process in misdemeanor cases for the person at the time the case is dismissed, if it's because the state made some error.
Right.
You know, if you're dismissing because it's part of a plea bargain, that's
Of course,
something
that's
different.
different.
Then the person can pay for it. But where the government screwed up and gave somebody a record and it's our fault, then we should pay to correct it.
And we should not be afraid to say it's insufficient evidence instead of saying see state's file.
Oh, you know,
So we
why
need
don't
to
you
be
talk
honest
about that?
We need to be honest. So we
Yes.
have a dismissal form now, a motion to dismiss. So a lot of my viewers think judges dismiss cases, so they don't. That's not in their power. Well, it's so limited that only in exceptional situations. Normally, a DA has to bring the charges, and they dismiss the charges. And so they have checks, look different reasons. One, if they can't make a case or they think their evidence is insufficient, they should dismiss for insufficient evidence. But it's a running policy that the DAs will say see state's file. So that means that it's not that easy to dismiss because the law is written such that you can't get an expunction until the statute of limitations has run on a case. So there are certain cases like murder, if it gets dismissed, there's no statute of limitations. And so that can be on their record. I did an expunction clinic in 2007 at a big church, a real big church. It wasn't my church. I can't think of Fountain of Praise. In 2007, I had 21 lawyers and 179 people came. I had a lady that she's never worked other than being a maid her whole life because she had a murder case for an abusive man. It was no billed. It was never expunged. She could never get a record, and we expunged
So this
that
is a
case.
tragedy.
It was a tragedy.
It
She
is.
was like in her 40s. And she was a smart lady, and she was defending herself. That's why it should have been dismissed, or no billed. So I'm just saying, these type of things, the district attorney's office should not stand in your way and say no just because the law says no, because she shouldn't have been followed on. It should have been investigated anyway.
And young prosecutors are being trained to write other state's file, see state's file, rather than the real reason. And it's for no purpose other than to make the expunction more difficult.
Which is more difficult in getting a job. I just had a case in which it was an assault trial. The prosecutors didn't subpoena. They talked to the witness on Friday. Tuesday was the trial. They didn't want the witness there because they didn't like her answer. And to make a long story short, they tried to use evidence they couldn't use, like some other person's 911 call that didn't see the event. They dismissed it in the middle of the trial. And when I saw the dismissal, they wrote on there, unable to locate complainant. Now, mind you, this husband and wife have been together 15 years.
Which is perjury.
Listen to me.
Which is perjury.
Which is perjury. I'm like, why did y'all write that on there? You just told me Friday that she said, if I come, I'm telling the truth. And that is, he did knock her teeth out, but it was an accident. They were both running after something and he elbowed her. But she's like she's a chick that wears a lot that gold and all that, so her teeth were weak because she had abused them when she was younger. And so she knocked him out. And so she said, and she never called the police. She never called the police on him. Her parents did because she took the kids there because her husband was trying to break in to get the kids. The call wasn't even about the assault. They didn't see it. It wasn't about that. So it's a long story. It got dismissed in the middle of trial. They put unable to locate witness. So now he can't get an expunction. He's an ex-drug dealer. I've been representing him for 15 years, or if not 20. I've made him get a job. I've helped both he and the woman rehabilitate their lives. He has a job, but because he used to be a drug dealer, he has a kind of long record. They have kids now. He works where his boss takes him around Texas to set up displays, like at the George R. Brown Convention Center. And so his boss takes him, okay?
Yep.
So that's the only kind of job he can get.
Job,
it's a legitimate job. I told the prosecutor the Friday before, pre-trial, we cannot do, she's a 16-week BIP program, batterers intervention program and dismiss, because it took me years to get this boy a job, and he can't do that. She said, oh, he can take the 4-hour online class. When it came to taking it, she said, oh, my boss said she couldn't. Okay, so we go to trial. They don't have the witness. They say, I call the witness. Now, I've represented both of them. They both used to fight. He's like 5'2", she's about 4'11". They love to fight. They used to fight other people. I've represented them both. I said, look, we're about to start the trial. Have they subpoenaed you? She said, no, I told them Friday I'm going to tell the truth, so they told me not to come. She said, but I'm on my way. And so they didn't even tell her that they started the trial. They tried to make the case without her.
Okay, this is so
and to lie and
dishonest.
put on here, I have it because when whoever wins, hopefully it's you in January, we're talking about this because the prosecutor wrote on there unable, and I said, why did y'all write that on there? They said, well, she was subpoenaed, but it was unexecuted. What the fart is unexecuted? I don't even know what that is. How can you subpoena somebody when you didn't serve it? I mean,
it's a pretext and it's a lie, and it wouldn't fly in 5th grade, much less in district
court. But this is
court.
what district attorneys are doing, and this was just 2 weeks ago.
And that's how they're being trained. So the values and the examples that are being set are terrible. I looked up for the Chronicle interview. There have been 10 major cases involving prosecutorial misconduct during Devin Anderson's tenure since 2013, since her husband passed away and she was appointed. In every case, she's either defended or she's fully supported without thinking there's anything wrong, the actions of the prosecutor.
And that's why there's distrust in the community.
That's right.
And I don't want distrust in the community. We're all taxpayers. We want a community and a district attorney's office that works for all of us. Let me say one more thing. We have 10 minutes, and I just have to get this off my chest. When Deputy Goforth, unfortunately, was murdered, awful, God bless his family. But for Devin and the current sheriff to say it was Black Lives Matter fault was infuriating.
It was irresponsible.
It was irresponsible.
It could have caused not just racial tension, it could have caused violence in the streets.
It could have incited a riot.
It could have. And it could have also incited violence back against
the police.
Police officers, which we've seen in other cities, in which thankfully our city has escaped. But that kind of irresponsible public statement with no evidence
At all.
to
just
back
because,
it up
Right. I mean, it's just a racial
is
statement.
reason enough
not
to vote for her.
Absolutely.
Or him.
Or him. Black Lives Matter is responsible, and then we find out, isn't God good? We find out that Deputy Goforth is with his girlfriend. God bless him, he shouldn't have been killed. But we also find out that the police officers that go investigate, they decide they want to go with his girlfriend, even though they have wives. And it was 2 or 3 officers that did that. And we find out that the defendant, who we don't know if he did it or not, but the person who's charged is seriously mentally ill and has been committed to a mental facility before. And it takes a lot to be committed to a mental facility. And so does he even know about Black Lives Matter? Who knows if he even knows what that organization is made up of young, progressive, mostly college students. They're the ones who started it. The people that I counsel with Black Lives Matter, one is getting his PhD from Rice. I mean, they're very intelligent people
This is
that
a
thought
legitimate,
society was
it's
a
a
different
legitimate
world.
civil rights group.
Yeah,
it is.
Right.
And just because it's got black in it doesn't mean it's not legitimate. And it doesn't mean that it has to engender the anger of everyone who's not black.
And let me just say
People
this before
have
you
a
go
right
on to
to
say
free
what they want to say. They have a right to free speech, but let me just break it down another way. When I look at a video of an unarmed man being killed, let's just say Gardner, I can't breathe, or any of the other ones, and my white colleague looks at it and they don't see the same thing, that makes a black person say, you see a defense to a cop? And I'm saying, are we looking at the same video? So that when these kids have watched this over and over and over again, what does it make them say? Black Lives Matter. My life has to matter to you. It's a personal statement. It's a legitimate civil rights organization, but it's a personal statement in that different races look at the same video and they see something different.
Sometimes they do.
Not everybody, but I'm just saying that's what it's addressing. That is. The Black Lives Matter is addressing those people who don't see an unarmed man being killed in front of their eyes.
And I respect that. And so I called it, I said it's an organization, it's a movement.
It's a movement.
But it is reflective of a distrust that is dangerous to our democracy.
Oh my God.
And so what we have to do is build a trustworthy criminal justice system. And we have to do that together. Prosecutors can do it with the defense bar. We have very different jobs. Prosecutors' jobs are to seek justice. The defense bar, of which I am a member, is to defend our clients zealously. We have no responsibility to anyone other than the accused, whereas the prosecutor has a responsibility to everyone.
To society. Right.
So I don't see them as conflicting positions. While we might be against each other in court, we should be at least working toward generally the same end. And I just think that those kinds of insightful, hateful, unsubstantiated claims divide us instead of bringing us together.
And what about the statement that it's time for the silent majority to speak? Because
she was referencing Nixon, who reneged on his promise to end the war in Vietnam. The silent majority refers to generally Caucasian people who are not politically active. It was a very racially charged statement. It was encrypted in
code.
In some kind of allegedly politically acceptable code. But I heard her, and it frightened me.
It scared me, and it scared me.
It's like Trump suggesting, inciting violence against Hillary, suggesting that the people with the Second Amendment could take care of his Hillary problem.
Oh, my God.
No, this is not government. This is anarchy. And
it's
so
dangerous.
It is dangerous, and we have to stand up and fight against it. You have to vote. It's your only real power in our society, and you have to have a representative at the table. Otherwise, your interests just won't be heard.
I agree, and everyone knows that I'm for Kim because I believe that you will take the whole society. You will take all of Harris County in all of its colors, its interests, into account because we all want a safe society. We do not want to live in a violent society. We want to be able.
We agree on that.
We agree on that. We want to attract major events here, and we want it to be safe. We want to work with the mayor's office. We want to work with the sheriff's department and the police. But we have to have honest, good people that actually care about our democracy. The most beautiful thing you said is some of these ideas are dangerous to our democracy. Won't you love a time again when after the politics is over, no matter what side wins, we work together?
Yes.
I am so angry with the last 20 years in Congress when everybody's like, it's Obama's fault. They're blaming things for Obama and then he wasn't even in office for. Just to do that racial code thing, just to encrypt that message so that,
so that it can further the hatred between us, which is not what it's not why we're here.
It's not a democracy.
And the older I get, and I bet the older you get, the clearer things become. It is up to us. We're the only ones who are going to do this work. It means getting off your sofa. It means doing something in addition to your job and your family responsibilities. It's called being politically active. And if you do nothing more than watch this show and tell a few friends and go vote, then great. You're doing more than about 40% of the rest of your fellow Americans. So there's a lot at stake in these local elections. Remember, we all want to vote for president. It's symbolic. It's every 4 years. It's special. But in truth, the local elections, from your district attorney and sheriff down to your county court judges and district court judges to the tax assessor, these positions are our government. These are the people the ones we elect to these positions do have a huge impact on our daily lives. And so be responsible, do something, help us. We want to build a better justice system, a trustworthy justice system, a system that you can believe in, and a system that's forward-thinking and truly 21st century. I don't know about you, Vivian, but I don't want to go back to anything. I don't remember yesterday as the good old days.
Right.
I'm looking forward to working together to build a trustworthy justice system.
I love it. I love it. We have 1 more minute, and I just want to ask you again. We're having a meet and greet on August 25th at 5:30 at Lloyd Geit's Gallery, the Geit Gallery, G-I-T-E, 2425 Alabama Street, Houston, Texas, 77004. We'd love for you to come. We'd love for you to talk to Kim, shake her hand, ask her whatever you want to ask her. Hopefully we've stimulated some questions. You can take some flyers. You can just talk to us. We might do it again in September. We want you to come out. We want you to spread the word. We're going to put this video on YouTube because we have got to work together for everybody to have a voice at the table. I don't want a DA that I'm paying the salary as a taxpayer because I have 2 properties in 3rd Ward. I pay a lot of taxes. And so I want a prosecutor that I can talk to not just when it's election time, but all year round. I don't want a prosecutor that says irresponsible things like the silent majority. That's leaving me out. I don't want anybody that's saying Black Lives Matter is responsible for a police officer's murder before it's ever been investigated. I want a prosecutor that investigates crime along with the sheriff's department. I want a prosecutor that doesn't seek conviction at any cost, that doesn't jail rape victims. A prosecutor that entertains other people's ideas to make sure that we're all properly represented on both sides. Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King, and we'll talk later. Good night. Thank you for tuning in again tonight. We have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week. He's been charged with crime. This is a show where I try to educate.